Thank you so much for joining us for our series of virtual in-conversation events. We are incredibly grateful to all of the creatives and artists who shared their time, their wisdom and their experience with us. It's easy to ask in the face of a global pandemic, why do the arts matter? But the truth is that theatre is as old as civilization itself. It's a place where we learn, we explore, and we share our common humanity. It's a pressure valve for society, a safe space in which to explore dangerous ideas. And above all, it's entertaining. At Dark Unicorn Productions, we rely very heavily on the support of our wonderful patrons to continue our work. You can join them and become a patron of the arts yourself by joining our scheme, which starts at just £50 per year to become a rainbow unicorn. Be part of the Dark Unicorn family. Be part of the recovery and the future of theatre. Don't let the lights go out. Become a patron today. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Dark Unicorn in Conversation. My guest today first came to my attention when she was a first-year undergraduate in the Theatre, Film and TV department at Aberystwyth University, during my final year as a lecturer there. She has spent a lifetime involved in the theatre, whether as a performer, choreographer, or these days, an increasingly prominent and vital voice on the Berlin burlesque scene, since moving to that city with her partner in 2015. Hers is a fascinating tale, charting a course from amateur theatre in Lincolnshire, via leading roles and training, to the London fashion scene, and thence to the mecca of cabaret, blazing a trail through one of the world's most vibrant, body-positive and progressive art forms. Her name is Chloe Gale, but she's best known to her ever-expanding coterie of admirers as the fabulous Miss Cadbury Parfait, a stunning example of cheeky, sassy, often satirical burlesque, as well as her work as a faculty member at the Shimmy Berlin Burlesque School and the producer of the acclaimed Extravagant Shambles cabaret strand. We started our chat by discussing when she first realised that she was, in fact, a performer.
Young. It was one of those, the first show I remember doing was with the Rainbows, and I must have been about 4 years old, and we learnt this basic pyjama teddy bear picnic routine, and my partner was throwing a little tantrum and got muddled up in the lineup. So when it came to the little partner dance, she wasn't standing next to me. She burst into tears, and I look out in the audience and just go, just keep going. And I did the entire routine as though she was standing there with me. And I was about 4 years old, and I thought, well, this is easy and this is fun. People clapping for you and everything else. And I thought, yeah, I like this. I could do this. And then from there, moved on to doing, I suppose, youth theatre, community theatre in my town, and it just became a part of my routine. It was every Sunday, and then as I got older, evenings after school. So I was always on. I was that child, probably very annoying, always wanting attention, and would basically do anything for it. And so I think it was just a sort of need for positive attention, but also enjoyed being a big show off. Still the same goes.
And when you were growing up, was there, I mean, obviously you just mentioned the things that you were involved with, but in general, in terms of your sort of setup, in terms of your family or whatever, was there a lot of sort of creativity growing up? Or was this a sort of an escape for it, or was it something that you were introduced to?
I suppose I grew up in a very small seaside town, and the only access to theatre was the Amdram, the local company, and then the pantomime. And we'd go, as a family, all part of the Brownies or something. But that was really my only live exposure. But it was my grandmother who was massively into art and dance and music and theatre, who would sit me down and put programs on that maybe she's recorded off the BBC or something onto VHS, and just sit me down and have me watch it, and then we'd talk about it. And I think it's one of those things when someone is so passionate about something and they're talking, it's infectious. You can't help but engage with it. And so obviously, as a young child, I'm just sitting there sort of absorbing everything I'm told. She showed me every female comic that she could. And it probably wasn't until secondary school, so about age 11, where I ventured down to London for the very first time and saw my first West End show and Shakespeare. And I'd never really seen anything quite like it, because being out in the sticks, they don't really venture there. So it was a sort of, wow, this is a whole new world. Why do I live so far away from all of this? I will end up here one day. So it, in some ways, had this sort of idyllic seaside town upbringing, but then in other ways, I didn't get the advantages that, say, a lot of my colleagues at university had from day one. So, there's pros and cons to it, but I think I definitely, once my grasp of performance was widened, was the kind of, yeah, this is what I need to do. Kind of almost a light bulb moment, yeah.
And you went from that small seaside town on the east of England
Yeah.
to a university in a small seaside town in the west of Wales, which is where I first met you.
Mm-hmm.
And you studied, was it film and theatre?
Yeah, drama, film and television.
This actually chimes in with, we did have a question sent in by Laura,
Mm-hmm.
who had asked about how your early experiences developed the sort of performer that you are today. But I only saw a tiny bit of your progress in the university, because I was teaching there at the time, and I left at the end of your first year. But how did your experiences, both not just within the university itself, but more broadly, because I know you did a lot of work outside of classes, how did your experiences there help to develop you towards the performer that you are today?
It was eye-opening again. I think going into university after doing Amdram, it's great doing amateur dramatics, but you do pick up a lot of bad habits, and especially if you spent your entire youth getting the lead, because maybe there's not many people going for it, and then suddenly not. I took a hit. The confidence was bruised, and suddenly realizing, okay, maybe you're not as good as you need to be now. So buckling down, going to see more performances, different types of performance. So in terms of my colleagues that were studying performance art, I had never seen really anything like that. I'd only seen straight plays or musicals. So this idea of devised theatre or engaging with body movements, I'd never seen anything like that. And so I wanted to take aspects and learn and really reflect on what I was doing when I was performing, rather than just learning lines and doing what you did in every rehearsal. It was quite stressful the third year, final year, doing the Antony and Cleopatra, and then obviously landing Cleopatra and realizing you've got a good 3 hours on stage in Shakespearean English, not one line cut, and being graded on it, and obviously having all your peers come to see you. It was a completely different experience from just being given a pantomime script and just doing what you did in every rehearsal, and that was good enough. And so it was looking at it and dissecting it and thinking, well, who is this character? What can I do with it? Obviously, first of all, looking after yourself, being able to do as many performances as you can in a row, keeping your voice, staying healthy, finding different aspects and running with it, in a sense of, I suppose, not just repeating, responding to what the other actors on stage are giving you, what the energy from the audience is giving you. And I think that has now trickled down into my burlesque work. I don't typically choreograph every single beat. I have sort of A to B's that I need to hit. And I know at this point I need to have done this and I need to have done that. But the bit in the middle is very much dependent on the audience. And if their energy levels are low, I'm going to try to do my best to get them going. If they're giving me, 100% energy, then I can maybe milk it a little bit more, take it slow, cool them down a little bit. And that was something I definitely learned to do at university, is to think of the space as everyone is playing a part in your performance. Because for you, it's going to make a performance feel worthwhile, I suppose, and you learn something. But for an audience member to feel that brought in is incredible. I've had it as an audience member watching it, and it's like going into an alternate universe. You're suddenly part of it, and it's almost like the actor or dancer performer is just you and them in the room. And that was something I had to learn, and it was quite difficult. I had a few after hours with a few directors to really help me sort of deconstruct the scene and figure out what energy I'm bringing to it. And it was tough, and there were some points where I'm thinking, I can't do this, someone else should have this part, this is too much. But in fact, I think it's helped me really understand my audience, regardless of what I'm doing, whether it's burlesque or acting or even speaking. So for my muggle job, being able to present convincingly to a department or to a manager, just bringing that in, and yeah, using those skills that I was thankfully given, because as much fun as I had doing the Amdram, and it taught me a lot, I wouldn't be the performer I am today had I have stayed within that world. Yeah.
And certainly, I mean, you've mentioned there, like the Anthony Cleopatra that you did. There will be a lot of people watching this who aren't familiar with the director of that, but there will be some who are. Director dramatist who also just retiring as professor of drama at the University, David Ian Rabey, and he does, because I've worked with him as an assistant director, and he does ask a lot, but in an extremely productive and I think fruitful way. Really, he does encourage the actors to behave in a way that then encourages the audience to be not just passive spectators but active spectators as well. And you must have found that, particularly dealing with such a complex role as Cleopatra within that.
Definitely. And he doesn't spoon feed you. He sort of lays the breadcrumbs down for you to get there yourself. It would be, easy enough for a director to say, okay, I want you to say it like this and walk across the room like that, and dot 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 dot. Whereas he will work with you, and again, it's this this breaking down of the character. And he said, you're not, for this part, you're not this 20-year-old student. You're a middle-aged queen with a vast array of famous lovers, and you need to show that. And I remember him saying after opening night, I have this thing when I perform, it's almost out of body, and I'll get off stage and I have no real memory of what's happened. And he walked into the dressing room and said, "You're one of those really annoying performers that in a rehearsal space, it's never quite there. But the minute you have the energy of the audience, it works." And he says it's very annoying as a director because you start to get concerned, thinking she's not going to deliver. And he says, he just said, "What happened? Your voice changed, your posture changed, the text suddenly became your words." And all I could say is, I don't know. I don't, whether it's adrenaline or the audience, or just a case of you have no other option, you've got to nail this. But it was a strange experience, and I'm pleased as well, sort of his faith in me being able to do it was proven and restored. And so he was able to see maybe what he saw in me when he cast me. And yeah, any ups and downs that we had in the rehearsal room was sort of forgotten, I suppose. Yeah.
And after your training there, you went to London and you undertook a variety of jobs that I think some people looking at it from the outside would say that they might not look like the sort of things that would develop you as a performer, but they most definitely do. Do you want to talk us through that period?
Yes, so I remember graduating in July and moving back to the sleepy hometown in Lincolnshire. I lasted about 2 weeks and I thought, no, I can't do this. I need buzz and culture and around me. I can't slip back into the life I had before. So I packed up and moved to London and obviously needed to get a job. So my first job in London was at Madame Tussauds, working as the photography agents. You know, as you pass through the attraction, there are certain key waxworks where you can have a professional photographer, and take a photo of you with, say, the Queen, Obama, and passing figures. If they, if they've just won an Oscar, then of course we'd pop a set on there. And then I've got to get you there, maybe you and the family or just yourself, and position you, take a photo, give you your token, and then later on you can buy a souvenir. And so I would flip between photography and the sales aspect. Your day was spent doing 50-50. Now, I'd never experienced anything quite like it. The 6 weeks holiday, when thousands upon thousands of international tourists pass through, some with little to no English, some come en masse with 20 members of the family, and you are solely in control of this set. People are climbing over barriers, under barriers to get access, but it's obviously messing with my set to take the photographs. So you've got to command the space in the sense of organising queues, controlling flow, getting people engaged to take a good photo, because obviously a good photo they're more likely to buy the key ring or the snow globe later on. And then of course later on trying to interact with them, all the while giving them the history of Tussauds. So this experience, explaining how the waxworks are made and all the training that we had. And I was good. My sales numbers were good, and I think it comes from this confidence to be able to speak to anybody and adapt. So it's no use going in hard with a poor single mum who's got 5 kids climbing all over her and she's not really listening. I can adapt and go and help her with the kids and something else, or just engaging differently, talking to the children, making them feel like this is the most wonderful thing they've ever done, and really just being a character. Now, it was exhausting and some days very infuriating. So I moved on from that job, and after sweet talking my dear grandmother, the bank of grandma, I took a not unpaid, but I suppose subsidised internship at Vogue House. So I was working in the press offices there, organising the invitations to go out for parties and couriers, and managing all the press that other publications had mentioned, and such. And I'm, as a lover of fashion and style as well. Obviously, walking into that hallowed hall and passing through Vogue and seeing Alexander Schulman and going down to Tatler and GQ was incredible. I mean, terrifying waking up every day thinking, I only have Primark to wear to Vogue. What am I going to do? But again, knowing how to present yourself in a certain air, suddenly the Primark disappeared. You were part of the team. I made an effort to engage with everyone, make sure they knew my name, networked, and I think that comes again from the confidence to put yourself on stage, follows through into life of putting yourself forward to the people you meet, because you never know who you might meet and the opportunity that may come from it. Now, that didn't last or too long before grandmother's like, right, you need a job because London rent's very expensive. So I applied for Harrods Disney. So they were opening a pop-up boutique, and they wanted people with sales experience or retail experience, but also those who obviously knew Disney films and songs front to back, but would be good with children, but also good with luxury customers. And so we went in and we had to really sell ourselves, I suppose, to a Disney standard. So the cheerfulness, the politeness, the sort of willingness to go above and beyond to make this experience, even though it's your 100th customer of the day, they should, feel like the customer that you're solely looking after. And that was great fun. I mean, we met the big chief of Disney. He came in, Bob Iger, and we all got to meet him. And Mickey Mouse came in. At the time, I'm 22 years old, but inside I'm squealing like an 8-year-old. And it was great fun, but again, it was a pop-up. So I then moved within Harrods through children's wear to ending up in handbags. And I'm thinking, oh, maybe this is it for me. And maybe I won't be performing as such again. One, I suppose, in London, time is thin. You're working a 9-hour shift, and then obviously commuting an hour each end. You've got an 11-hour day. The thought of then maybe going to a rehearsal or a studio space afterwards is you just want to get home, open a bottle of wine and get into bed. But also funding it, if you went part-time or if you tried to pay for classes or anything else, it was going to be expensive. And so I just sort of resigned myself to the fact that, well, actually maybe I won't perform in a sense again. I'll always enjoy going to the theatre, and always took advantage of the last minute tickets to go and see as many shows as possible. But just thinking, well, I enjoy the job I have now. I love fashion. Harrods was a fantastic place to work for. If again, retail very stressful. But I always tried to bring in a little bit of personality and, I suppose, presence. And it always paid off, because I was always known, even in a company that has thousands of employees. Heads of departments could walk through and, they, hi Chloe, hi, how are you? And that I always like to be the big fish in the small pond. But when you move to London, you're a very, very small fish in an ocean. And it was like, regardless of what I did, I always wanted to get back up to that sort of level of being known and appreciated and called on when people thought I would be necessary for whatever they were doing. And I think again that comes from performing. You want the spotlight and you want recognition, but you want to exert yourself for it. You don't obviously want to be handed it solely, just because you want to earn it. And I think I always tried to do that in whatever role I had, be it retail, hospitality. I did some bar work, interning, moving around, just to, I suppose, keep my own sanity and get out of bed in the morning and not feel like I failed as a performer and moved away from that world.
I mean, luxury retail as well must bring with it enormous possibilities for people watching and character observation, just with the sorts of people you get over the door.
The stories I have, and you'd play celebrity spots, and the whispers pass through, the so and so's in the shop, so and so's here, and obviously you trying to go and have a little peek, but also the non-celebrities, but the highly wealthy, royalty coming through. I, in fact, unknowingly was asked to go and put together an outfit when I was at Harvey Nichols, of a dress that could be worn to, say, the races or something, with a hat and a pair of shoes and a handbag, and put together a piece. And it got sent up to private shopping, and they approved it, and it was sent out. And turns out Kate Middleton wore it on a tour of Australia, and I'm thinking, I picked that dress. That's ridiculous that I've somehow dressed the future Queen of England without realizing it. But these experiences, yep, it makes a great dinner party chat, and I don't think I'd ever get those sort of experiences ever again. Sort of insider look into that world without being part of it. But yeah, it was never dull, and I did get to meet a lot of celebrities. But the rule was you had to treat them as a customer, which is why they shopped there. They didn't want the fuss and the fluff. But I laid down to my manager and said, there are 4 people who, if they come in, the rules are out the window. I'm sorry, I'm going to fangirl all over them. Julie Andrews, obviously. The Queen, because I mean, I'd probably just want to hug her. Colin Firth, I'd hump his leg like a dog, and then Beyonce. And annoyingly, she did come in on my day off. But it's probably for the best. Again, I probably would have been removed forcibly by her security. But other than that, you had to sort of treat them as members of the public. But you both know this is that weird thing where you look at each other and obviously your face recognizes them, and they realize that you recognize who they are, and then you act like you don't know who they are. It's a very weird dynamic. In your head you're going, it's Penelope Cruz, but you're just like, and what can I help you with today? It's strange.
I mean, we've talked, some length there about your work with, particularly high-end fashion and that sort of thing. And certainly, as long as I've known you, you've always had impeccable style. Is fashion how you perform day to day when you're not, directly performing? And what role has fashion had in your life and your work?
Yeah, definitely. It's what do I want to present to the world today? And it goes on my mood. And of course, where you're going, you've got to take that. I'm a great fan of a dress code, and having something to sort of aim for. But I've always been playful from a child. I'd be climbing trees in a ball gown, but I've got welly boots on. But I wanted to wear the ball gown that day, and I was never. I suppose. Again, it's my grandma and my mum, but my grandma always pushed towards style over fashion trends. I know what works for my body, and if just because it's in fashion or it's a trend, I won't wear it. And sometimes it means that you can look incredibly unfashionable but stylish. And I know I'm never going to be Kate Moss cool, and I'm fine with that. I'm a lover of vintage styles, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s glamour. And I'm very feminine in shape, and these fashions work for me. Whereas if you put me in a 90s low-rise jean, just awful. And I suppose, yeah, really deciding on what you want to present to the people that you meet, even if it is just popping to the bakery or, going to the supermarket for milk. It's still a performance. And it doesn't mean to say you need to be done up to the nines, but I think you should feel good in what you are wearing, because you will walk taller. And it's infectious. You see people when they pass you in the street, they take a look, they may smile, or even come up to you and ask you where you got this from, or praise you on your outfit. And that does feel really good. Sometimes you get people who don't quite get what you're trying to do, and they look a bit confused, but I also quite love that as well. That it's completely personal in response, and it's fun for me. I do plan, because I'm awful in the morning, so I can sleep for Britain, and I have to, if I know I'm going somewhere, I have to at least mentally have an outfit together, so I don't just throw something on the next day, because it's not going to be as good. It's as maybe with something you've constructed. And going back to the performance element, I always found putting your costume on helps so much with your performance. So obviously, obvious things like corsets or whatever else is going to make you stand differently. You shallower breaths, you've got to work on voice control. But being a queen, but if you're in tracky bottoms for rehearsal, it's quite difficult to feel regal in a Aberystwyth ski club hoodie. So having that really helps, and I think the same, it then passes through into life. If you feel good and you look good, then you'll do better. And it's there's always dress for the job you wish you had, this sort of idea. It's been slightly challenging since now being in Berlin, a city of minimal, unglamorous, very raw fashion. Everything's quite muted, black, sportswear, party wear, lots of leather and sort of hard, tougher fabrics. And I show up, 2 suitcases filled with pink, fluffy things and bright yellow tops, but I just refused. And people do look at you on the street, when you've got red lipstick on in the day and maybe a pair of heels or something. But I just refused to just wear what everyone else is wearing just because everyone else is wearing it, because it's not me, and I won't feel as good in it. You probably make yourself a little smaller. The last thing I want to do is disappear into a crowd, because it's just not me. I need to be seen, and if that means wearing a leopard print dress, red lipstick, and a little handbag on my arm, just to go and pick up bread and milk from the supermarket, so be it.
Well, I mean, but I think, sort of my experience of your particular approach to fashion and style has always been that you make very glamorous stuff look immaculate, but in an accessible way to people around you. So it's people don't feel don't feel intimidated, but they will notice and they will appreciate.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it was, and also you know, sorry, this is going to sound appallingly to our audience, so I'm just sitting over your ass for that longer. You've never refused before. I think in terms of how it is possible to make anything look good, anything that looks good, look better just by how you wear it. I think one of my favourite moments in terms of how other people who we didn't know engaged with it was this is appalling clang moment here, but Chloe and I did go to a little soiree a few years ago at the Palace with her Madge, and it was the woman on the street as we were waiting for the gates to open who came over and said to you, "That's an amazing dress. Who designed it for you?"
Yeah.
Because that was the, I think if I hadn't known you, I'd have made that assumption too, probably.
I think it goes back to how you feel in the clothes, and I felt amazing in it. But it was, an ASOS buy, something I just found online and thought, that's nice. And it has pockets, because there's not enough pockets in women's clothes. And the straw boater was from my grandmother, just a vintage, probably car boot find, for 50p. I was lucky enough, I did borrow a friend's handbag. She had a beautiful little designer crossbody, and just to sort of elevate it and put it all together. But I would never want people to feel uncomfortable in what I was wearing. But I do sometimes feel, I have had a few friends tell me this, if they know they're meeting me, they will think about their outfit. And I'm like, you don't have to do that. He said, no, if I know we're going for lunch or something, I will maybe put a shirt on over a t-shirt. It's like, it's not a job interview. Please just be comfortable. They said, well, I just sometimes feel a bit silly when you're sitting there in a full dress and everything else, and I've just got jeans and a t-shirt on. And I said, but I like that about you. You look good in a jeans and a t-shirt. But yeah, it's fun. I hope I never grow out of dressing up and having a sort of sense of style. It's changed through weight fluctuations and money coming through. Of course, it changes, but I am that awful idealistic shopper where I have an idea in my head of how I want to look, and it probably comes through from years of absorbing Hollywood films, especially old Hollywood, and thinking I want to look like that. And it probably then goes, yeah, I want to look like that because of the way they were treated. She's the leading female, or she gets the guy, or she is the, you can't take your eyes off her when she's doing an 8-minute dance break in a MGM musical. And think, I want to live my life in an MGM musical, even if I am just popping to see a friend for a cup of tea. And
is it covering? Is it masking something, or is it adding to something?
I think adding. If anything, I probably dress down when I feel down. And I notice when I do it, and now when people start to notice, if I do show up in just jeans and a top, it's like, are you ill? Or what's happening? And then I may just say, no, I just wanted to wear jeans today. But realistically, there is probably something sort of going on, and I'm not feeling my best, or I'm a bit tired, or sort of run down or upset about something. That sort of spark for getting up, doing your hair and makeup, and putting an outfit together is maybe lost. And then it's a sort of, right, okay, it makes you feel good, so to put a bit more effort in. My grandmother always, even if she was out in the garden, which no one could see into, high fences, would always put her lipstick on. Always. And as a small child, you go, why? She was, because it's for me, and I feel put together and more like myself. And you're just like, well, there you have it. It's something for you. It can obviously influence everyone around you, but it's a personal, I suppose, control of everything that's going on in your head and your feelings and what you want out of that day. When you sort of head out. I mean, don't get me wrong, when I'm not going anywhere, I love it. I love lounging around in pajamas with hair scraped up, absolutely no makeup. I mean, this quarantine, it's been 1 out of 5 days since I've put a bra on. It's felt wonderful, but but it also felt weird. And then when the lockdown here was lifted, we just went to one of our favourite restaurants, and I went full blown, dressed up. We're going to a French place, so I'm like head to toe black, red lipstick on, nails done, hair done, leopard print coat, handbag on, and you arrive there in Berlin, and everyone else is just in leggings and a t-shirt or a hoodie, and you do walk in and feel a little out of place, but then slightly enjoy that also everyone is maybe having a little glance over at you as well. And it felt like I'm back. I feel like myself again, definitely.
Of course, all of this that we've talked about, I mean, that whole sort of dressing up and dressing up for you is a huge part of the work that you do now as a burlesque artist, is that whole sort of style. In fact, whatever you may do with the clothes once they're on, is a huge part of the world of burlesque. What first drew you to burlesque as an art form, and what do you feel, I suppose, you wanted to say through your persona and through your work?
I suppose the first thing that drew me to it, I hadn't really seen anything live until a friend's hen party in London, and we went along to the once great Madame Jojo's in Soho, and we saw a live show, and we all dressed up for the hen, and I think I put together, it's probably tacky as anything now, from fancy dress shops, a bad feather boa and a cheap ill-fitting corset with ruffly knickers on and a pink wig. And we went along. I ended up being dragged on stage for like a shimmy competition, and I ended up winning, and we had champagne and everything else. But I remember watching the show and first of all falling in love with the costumes, just dripping in rhinestones, and the corsets and the stockings and the gloves, and it's just glamour that in our age we don't experience, we don't do, and the feathers and showgirl again, MGM musical fantasy meets Las Vegas showgirls, and just being in awe and thinking I want to live in these clothes. But then also how much power this performer had over a room of drunken idiots, but you'd watch someone take this glove off, and a glove is not nowadays is not particularly scandalous if a woman takes a glove off, and yet you're there holding your breath, watching every beat as she does it. And I love the control that the performer had. It was incredible to see. And then the naughtiness of it, the sort of cheekiness, and I watched it and I really enjoyed it, and I thought I'd like to do something like that. However, for me, then thinking I don't know if I could take my clothes off on stage, and it's definitely something I've had to learn and shed That came from moving to Berlin. So the city is a freeing experience. I realized that I had this instilled British uptightness, that nudity meant sex, and your body was to be something to either be ashamed of or to be hidden, and you give it to another person. And looking back, hiding in changing rooms under towels to keep everything hidden, even though you're in an all female space. Here I can go to the sauna now, and it's there's every gender and sex under the sun all in one room, and you're standing completely naked. You go to the lakes, the same thing. And just realizing that it's just skin, and just because you're nude, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't cheapen you. It doesn't make you a slut. You're not asking for attention. You're just naked. And so it took me a while to learn or unlearn, I suppose, this, and also to realize that bodies are all different. And that's why burlesque is so brilliant, because it shows different bodies. It shows fat bodies, thin bodies, no boobs, huge boobs, male bodies, disabilities as well. It showcases everything, different races, different sexual preferences and gender identities. It's not photoshopped perfect bodies. And I think typically in the UK, that's all, as a young female, that's all you see in magazines and films. And then you think, oh well, if my boobs don't look like that and my bum doesn't look like that, then I have no business showing my body off, because clearly no one wants to see it. And so when you get to burlesque and you see a bigger person, or someone with the same body shape as you, or someone that you just wouldn't maybe think would be confident to do that, and suddenly they're going for it, hell's bells. The audience is going crazy. You can see how much they're loving it, and you're thinking, this is fantastic. I want that feeling. And the first performance I did when I moved here, after doing some classes and sort of developing a persona and an act, we're all backstage, we're all graduating students, and are you nervous? Are you nervous? And everyone's like, yeah, I've never been on stage before. The audience, I'm really scared. And for me, it was like, I am really terrified about taking my clothes off. You could put me on stage for hours. You could just send me out there with a microphone now, and I will entertain them, no problem. But the thought of going and being essentially topless for all of 20 seconds put the fear of God into me. And I did it. The audience went crazy, and I had that weird, I don't really remember much of actually performing, and you get off stage and you're out of breath and all sweaty and on this huge adrenaline rush. And I was like, I want to do it again. And it just sort of developed. And with my persona, I wanted to sort of show that sexiness can be what you want it to be. It can be all out femme fatale. It can be, vamp with a whip. Or for me, I am aware I've got a cutesy little baby face with a tendency to pull faces on stage. Can't control it. It goes with however I'm feeling. So I went down this sort of comedy cheeky route, And I thought, if my face is going to betray me, well, I might as well make it look like I'm doing it on purpose. And I love the safety net laughter gives me. Because even if someone doesn't think that your performance was either particularly sexy or provocative, they probably laughed. So my opening act was a sort of low budget. I didn't want to spend a huge amount on a costume. It was just pajamas and my hair in curlers, and I get stood up as I'm getting ready for this date, and I proceed to drink a lot of white wine on stage, watered down. I did it once with wine. It was awful. It hit halfway through the dance, and then halfway through, I think, well, screw him, and proceed to pull out a big pink sparkly dildo and have some fun pretending to self-love on stage whilst in pink sparkly hot pants and hair curlers. And obviously no one expects you to go into this box and just present this on stage, like, and it always goes down a treat, and it's my sort of lazy act because it's so simple. I'm in pajamas, but I know it's always going to get the audience going. And I thought, yeah, I can run with this. This can be Cadbury. This tongue-in-cheek, I think, still holding on to that British sense of humour of timing, and knowing what works and how to play to the room. Incorporating classic elements of burlesque through the classes and the shows that I go to, but then sometimes saying to the rules and saying, well, I don't want to do it like that. And that's the great thing about burlesque, is it's yours to do with what you want. However, you've got to do it well and decide on who you want to be. And that can change for each performance you do. I have different things where then I did a Cleopatra act, and it was more sensual but still cheeky, playing this seductress of a queen, which is obviously very different from pajama lady to queen lady, but it's still Cadbury at the core. But it's Cadbury playing different roles. So I suppose you get Chloe playing Cadbury playing different roles, and it goes through. And I adore doing it. It's given me this new lease of performance, a new complete school of performance. And I've met some incredible performers, and they're all from different walks of life. Some come from theatre, some come from singing or dance training, others are sex workers, they're strippers, pole dancers, and they incorporate it into what they do. And I love that you're surrounded by people who are ultimately artists. They create something from usually a tiny budget, unless you're a huge headliner, and you can make something completely wonderful with it that might just brighten up someone's Thursday evening.
Berlin is obviously a city synonymous with cabaret and with this sort of type of performance, and a massive thriving burlesque scene, which I think you're now a pretty integral part of. But was it a tough scene to crack?
There's a few schools that offer like a graduate program, so you graduate by performing. It at the beginning felt a bit cliquey, so this school, that school, or friends that had developed, and they knew other people, and it was like, oh, you don't know so and so, and you're like, well, you have to go do some more research. But I made an effort of going to shows and volunteering, so to do the door or to stage kitten and pick up the clothes as they're thrown off, just to show willingness, maybe see a show for free because I just moved over and I wasn't really earning, earning all that much, and just to, I suppose, have people used to you being around. And then just putting yourself forward for anything, saying if you have got a spot, I can come down, or if someone calls sick, I'm down the road, I've got my costume ready to go, I can be there in 2 hours or something like that. And that was good. And then I started performing more regularly. We've got some great venues that are thankfully opening up again, and just saying, this is what I can offer you, and taking time to build content, be it on Instagram or Facebook, so you are searchable. But then there was a moment with a friend of mine. She has a master's in directing, but we worked together in a startup. That's how we met. And she was round on sitting here in the flat, and we were probably a couple of bottles of wine in, and we were talking about the possibility of us producing and opening up a whole new sort of show to the Berlin market, because there's some fabulous drag nights that always offer spots to burlesque performers. The schools always do these big graduation and festivals, and then there's other more niche things that are going on. There's a fantastic night called Jews, led by two American Jews that bring in drag and burlesque, and creating great spaces for queer performers. And we would decide, maybe we want to offer something else as well. And we wanted to combat the issue that sometimes arises where new performers can sometimes be expected to perform for free or for a very small fee. And we think you should be given something for your performance, even if it's your first. So the idea is we wanted to create this little production company that would allow a spot for new performers, so they can try it out in a space that is completely non-judgmental of their skill level and such. And it sort of grew. We did our first one in a really great bar. They're really supportive, and it was tiny space, and we filled it. Everyone came to see the show, and we had some drag, we had some singing, we had burlesque from local artists who didn't get booked too often, or were struggling to get booked. And it's sort of grown, and we're now at a much bigger venue, Monster Ronson's, which is this fantastic karaoke bar come queer safe space with a stage for performance. And they kind of let us do whatever we want. They're like, yep, there's no restrictions, you go for it. And we do one, I suppose, once every season, because Charlotte and I both work full time outside of this. We try and pull in themes and put out calls for performers with acts that would fit themes. So we did a pride show, and we insisted on having every performer would be queer identifying, so we weren't taking space up from queer performers in a pride show. It didn't feel right. And myself, I as I don't identify as queer, I didn't perform, and it was quite nice just to watch and enjoy it. We've done political shows, we've done fun Halloween shows, and it has helped me then as a performer integrate into other circles as well, because I am then hiring other performers. So then they come and perform for Extravagant Shambles, which is our show, and then they may then have me go and perform in their production, or somebody may come and see one of the performers we've booked because they're a fan, and then, for instance, I may perform on the same night, and then I get booked through that because they've seen me perform when maybe they haven't before. And so Berlin is great in that the community is very supportive, and they try to be as open as they can. Obviously it is competitive, and as performers as well, you want the booking. There's at the minute there's obviously discussions about the equality of performers ongoing, of are we giving enough space to Black performers, people of colour? Are we giving enough space to queer performers? Are we giving enough space to minority groups? And it's a discussion that any booker is dealing with, but also as a performer you're also aware that things may change for the better, but it's an ongoing discussion. But Berlin has been a great support, and because everything is cheaper here, it's much more realistic to be able to survive as a performer full time as, say, in London, where rents are double, triple, and everything else on top of it. So I think that's why artists do flock to Berlin. There's the history of the cabaret. Obviously, the nightclub scene is world famous. The city doesn't really sleep, and there's always somewhere else for you to go. So people do flock here for that. But just, I guess, as everywhere else in the world, there's still things that we can be doing better to help all performers really achieve their potential. Yeah, for sure.
Germany obviously handled the COVID-19 outbreak pretty well, probably because you have a functioning government made up of real people over there rather than the sort of cartoonist wet dream was set up. Okay, but how was lockdown for you?
Strange. I started working from home for the startup that I worked for a while, and I think it went a bit crazy. I sort of lost my mind a little there. I'm used to being socially exhausted before I go to bed. So then moving from what you can probably see behind the dining room table to where I am now on the sofa, that being my day, and the only person I've talked to is either on the phone like this or Mark, my partner, then I was just, there was no switching off, and you're climbing into bed, and I wasn't physically exhausted and I wasn't mentally exhausted. And because of that, your brain's going into overload, and you're remembering the most ridiculously embarrassing things from when you're 8 years old, and you're thinking, why am I thinking about this now? And I just missed going out and being with people, because I used to love going out and being with people, but I love that relaxation when you return home and you've had a good night but you're pleased to be home. And I was not pleased to be home, and then I stopped working just because the company decided that they would keep a minimal skeleton team on to keep everything afloat, but obviously for financial reasons that it wasn't possible that we could all keep working. And that actually was better for me, because I could almost pick my own boredom. I wasn't forced to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day. I could look at maybe doing some other projects. So I did a bit of costuming, and I've done some reading, and then I've taken some online classes. I've taught some online burlesque classes. And then things started to relax. And so, we could go to the park, or two households could meet. And we've got some lovely friends that live down the road. And so we did a cake exchange at the beginning, where they'd bake a cake one week and us the next, and we just drop round slices just outside the door, so you weren't actually going in. And then we started doing dinner parties and taking it in turns to put on a whole evening and play games. And it was really really nice to have that to look forward to and think just 2 more days and then we'll be at Andrew and Niels's having curry night and then playing games and drinking copious amounts of gin. And then restaurants opened and now bars are open, and so I'm in this weird place of being on furlough, or Kurzarbeit as it's here, and the weather's glorious and I have nothing to do. So I have this freedom where financially it's not wonderful, but it's enough for rent and eating. But I can sort of do what I want. And I've never had this in my life because I went straight from school to university to work. I had no gap year. I had no sort of time off. This is the first time in my life where I can wake up and do what I want, be it go to the lakes or stay in bed all day or go see a friend. And going back to work is going to be very difficult for sure. But now the performance spaces are opening up, then I can look at performing more often, because before I was balancing it between a full-time job and obviously not wanting to perform on a school night because invariably, there's always Prosecco or champagne after a show and then you've got to head into work the next day. Whereas now that I don't have that alarm clock, the days of the week no longer mean anything, but also my alcohol intake has vastly increased. But it's been really good here, and I don't know, the Germans just seem to get on with things. They, they just seem to, just sort of listen to what the government's telling you and just sort of plod on with it. And there's no grey areas. The rules were laid down. Obviously, I watch the news and follow all the newspapers from the UK, and every day is just something else. And you talk to friends and see how their experiences are going. And I have to say it's quite nice being under Merkel right now, I have to say.
And who can blame you for saying that, really? So that now that performance spaces are opening up and that sort of thing, what can we expect from Cadbury Parfait current climate?
Well, the first issue is current costumes are going to be a bit of a squeeze because there's definitely been some quarantine increases, which is fine. It's happened. It's been a stressful time and things change. So there may be some adaptations that need to be done. I've got a few performances booked, some still virtually because they're UK based, and I want to work on a new act. I've got the basis down. It's going to be a sort of Dorothy Gale from The Wizard of Oz theme, and have been sat rhinestoning a lot. And then hopefully talking to my co-producer Charlotte to look at getting Extravagant Shambles back up, because we were lucky we were able to do a Valentine's show on Valentine's Day before all of this hit, and so it'd be nice to maybe do a show in the summer just as a welcome back. We're here, and showing that now more than any other time, theatre, the arts need support. That of all the things people have done in lockdown, they turn to film and television and music and books and artistic skills to get them through it. And so we want the sort of favour to be returned with ticket sales and participation and such like that. And I want to do my bit to keep pushing for awareness of that. And I think Cadbury, coming from the sort of small humble beginning of local theatre, which is massively underfunded, wants to keep pushing for the importance of a theatre performance in any form. And then hopefully some festivals later on in the year. A few have been postponed, obviously. But it was my first year, which was looking pretty, blocked out. And unfortunately, obviously, it didn't go that way. And I was supposed to be going all over the UK and to the Netherlands and all sorts of festivals. And they've all been sort of a pin put in those. But obviously, we appreciate it's for public safety. But we hope that audience members that always used to come to shows continue to, but then it also brings in new people, just because if, like me, your attitude is now, what am I waiting for? This sort of just do it, because you don't know the next time this sort of life could become normal, which is an awful thought if this continues. But then if there's threats of wars and God knows what else going on politically, is sort of just go out, just go and do something, and also think about where your money's going. If you're happy to go and spend £50, €50 in a giant commercial, I don't know, cinema to see a film, but you're unwilling to go see a friend's show for €10. Think about who it's benefiting. The Hollywood film is not going to miss your cinema entry, but it could be a sort of end of a career for a performer or a venue that has since been closed during lockdown. So we've done some work with a few venues, and we want to see what we can do, and we happily do some charity fundraising raffles and things within shows to try and generate a bit more income for the venues that do host and support us. Definitely.
One of the people, as I've been saying to each of our guests, was one of the people who've been spirited away by 2020 was James Lipton, who was founder of Inside the Actors Studio. He liked to end each interview with 10 quick questions, which he had stolen from elsewhere, and so I have no qualms about doing so from him. So, to begin at the beginning, what's your favourite word?
Weirdly, it's puddle. I like saying it. It feels good on the mouth. Puddle.
And your least favourite word?
Accurately, because I have to sound it to say it correctly.
A question you can answer however you like. What turns you on?
Money. Is that dark? We'll run with it. We'll go with it.
What turns you off?
Lateness. Yeah, just so rude. Really irritates me.
I can state for the record that Chloe turned up on the dot of 2 o'clock, which was and has never narrowly been late, I think, for any time we've ever met. What sound or noise do you love?
The sea, the ocean.
And what sound or noise do you hate?
Loud chewers, when you can hear everything that's going on in the mouth, really off-putting.
What's your favourite swear word?
It's the big one. It's obviously very divisive. It's cunt.
Beautifully delivered. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
It's a good one. I've been thinking about this during lockdown a lot. I think a teacher in some form. I learn by teaching, and I've learned a lot through teaching recently. yeah, I don't know what. I don't know whether children or adults. Probably children. I find they're more malleable than adults.
And what profession would you not ever want to do?
I I suppose a dentist.
If, when your time comes, you discover that heaven does indeed exist, what do you want to hear said to you on arrival?
Ooh. Oh, that's a good one. I suppose that anything goes.
We've had some questions sent in from I was going to say real people there. I'll try that again. We've had some questions sent in to be put to you. Firstly, Anne from Wolverhampton. Are you ever self-conscious? If so, why and how do you overcome this?
Yes, I'd say so. Usually in new situations that I don't know. I'm not very good at not being useful, so I hate arriving to a new venue and they don't really do anything with you and you're standing there and you don't really know what to do. And I still have that British politeness of just don't do anything. Just stand there until you're sort of told what to do, lest you wander into a room you're not supposed to or upset someone. So I can feel very self-conscious when I'm a bit lost. And I suppose I've had to teach myself to ask questions and not feel like a burden through that. And I suppose just saying to yourself, look, you're being ridiculous. No one else is going to be thinking this about you if you just ask, or if you just even step out of a situation that you're uncomfortable with. Just remembering that whatever you're imagining in your head is probably worse than anyone is thinking, and just think it can't get worse than this. So, do your best.
We've had two in from Berlin. Jack has asked for a 3-in-1. What's been the most difficult thing about making it in burlesque? Have you encountered racism along the way, and what would you still like to achieve within burlesque?
Oh, okay. So, first point, probably costuming. I am a massive procrastinator and can be found the night before still gluing things to things. And I beat myself up every time I do it because I think it's not as good as it could be, and now you're stressed and everything else. But do I do it the next time? Yes, of course I do it the next time, because that's just who I am as a person. I work best under pressure. I suppose the racism one, I suppose the simple answer is yes, but not in any sort of outwardly aggressive experience, more of either being sort of tokenized and 10 white performers and then they go, oh, tick box, we've got our one non-white individual in, or yeah, just sometimes the use of words, things like exotic, and bad lighting. Like learn to light different skin tones, learn to photograph different skin tones, different bodies. It makes you a better lighting director, a better photographer, but also it does help the performer look and feel better. But then we did have a situation which it shouldn't have been a one-off, but at one point I was doing a show again at some Stourton August with the gorgeous Coco DeVille, and Martini Cherry was hosting, and we looked up and we said, we've never been in a backstage and we're all black. we never had that, and it was a weird sort of emotional thing. We had a big hug and everything else, and Coco and Martini have been working far longer than I have, and they said, God, it really shouldn't be a celebration. This should be, just a norm. But sadly, it was a big deal. Obviously, we had a wonderful night together. But it just goes to show that there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of checkboxing, tokenizing performers, or worse, like fetishizing them, to fit this sort of exotic ideal that you have going on. And then what was point 3?
What would you still like to achieve within burlesque?
I suppose I want to continue refining and always learning, travel more, do more festivals, sort of dying to continue going around Europe, to the UK, and then hopefully go over to America and at least go and see the Burlesque Hall of Fame in Vegas, and always wanted to go to New Orleans and experience sort of the culture and the burlesque there. And then I suppose, continue helping facilitate discussions on how it can get better, how it can change, and just being a part of that. And just hopefully making a difference, even if it's just a teeny amount, just being part of that.
And finally, Luke asks, after 2020 threw everything at us, who do you choose, Brittany or Christina?
I think Brittany, due to some fantastic posts that she's been making during this, it's bad when Brittany challenges capitalism and suggests maybe moving towards a socialist approach. When Brittany is saying something like that, there's something really wrong with the system. So Brittany, and I really hope her next album comes out, is called Manifesto. Please, Brittany, please.
Chloe Gale, Cadbury Parfait, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.